Hi, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to Office Hours with IDOE and InSource. And thank you so much for joining us today. So InSource, of course, is the Parent Training and Information Center for Indiana, and we're celebrating our 50th year. And we cover all across the state of Indiana. And so we have 2 more office hours to finish up this school year. And so today I am thrilled to have Maggie Hampton with us from the Department of Education. She can do a little bit of introduction of herself, and she today is going to talk about how to avoid the summer slide. Additionally, we will also have this up on our website, on our YouTube channel to send out to anyone. So again, my name is Lisa Paddock. I work for InSource, Indiana's for families with special needs. And InSource is the Parent Training Center for Indiana. So we're so glad that you've joined Office Hours with IDOE and InSource today. And if you have questions, please put them in the chat. I'll be watching them and ask Maggie along the way. And we are super excited. So without any further delay, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Maggie so she can talk to us about some ideas for the summer. So again, thank you so much for joining us. And Maggie, I will turn everything over to you for office hours today.
Awesome. Thank you, Lisa. Like Lisa said, my name is Maggie Hampton, and I am one of the technical assistant specialists at the Office of Special Education. We created this slide with my coworker, DeJuan Foster. He is another technical assistant specialist, and he wasn't able to join us. He had another event to go to today, but we thought about some different ideas to talk about summer slide for a wide range of kiddos. So he specializes in that early childhood area. We're both parents of young kiddos. I was just telling Lisa earlier, I have a kiddo finishing up 4th grade and a kiddo finishing up freshman year. In our neurodivergent household, summer is something that we definitely plan for very intentionally. So we wanted to make sure to share some of those tips with you. And as we go through this, I was also telling Lisa, we have just such a wide range of communities in Indiana that I'm not really going to talk about specific programs because there are so many things that are different in each community, but we really wanted to make sure that we came up with some ideas that really, hit the needs of all kinds of different students in all kinds of different communities. So I really hope we found something that's helpful for you in planning your summer. So this is just a little bit about what we're going to be talking today. I'll tell you a little bit about what the summer slide is, if that's a term that's not familiar to you. And then we'll also talk about the impact of that summer slide and what that means for your student. And then once we talk about that, we'll talk about some ideas to combat that summer slide into summer stride. And we're all ready and prepared by the time the next school year rolls around. And of course, I'd like to leave you with some resources that you can continue to think about and plan your summer after we're finished today. So please ask questions along the way, type them in the chat. You can raise your hand in the Google Meet down there below. There's a little hand at the bottom. You can raise your hand if you have a question. Happy to listen to you coming off mute. Like I said, this is, one mama to another, just trying to give you some ideas of ways we can support our kiddos over the summer. So let's start with talking about what the summer slide is. So this slide on the screen, it looks really fun. We've got a sun right there on a playground slide, but there is a real negative impact. And what we're talking about here is the summer slide. It refers to the decline in academic skills during the summer months when kiddos aren't in school. So we're going to focus on reading and math today, but these same kind of ideas apply in the areas of writing, in science and history and all of the other things that your students learn while they're at school. When they take that break over the summer and they're not working their brains and they're not using those skills on a regular basis, there is a little bit of slide in those skills, and students can forget some things and if they're not using those skills throughout those summer weeks or months that they're not in school. So that's what we're talking about today, is just that that decline in skills over the summer when we're not, using those academic skills. We also hear the term sometimes summer learning loss. And that is kind of a little bit more serious tone to it, that learning loss. But it's this really critical time because students are declining in their academic skills, and they might lose some concepts, some understanding, some ideas that they had worked really hard to learn over the school year. So we see students, if your students in elementary school, maybe you get a mailer every week or every month saying like, this is the stuff we worked on in school this week. You see homework coming home and those skills maybe that your student is struggling with that you're seeing on the homework. And then once they get it, it's something really great to celebrate and achieve. I'm thinking like maybe you're working on multiplication tables or really tricky spelling lists, things like that, and then once you work on it, if you don't keep going at it, you can lose those skills. So we work on that throughout the school year with some review, maybe they call it spiral review, where we keep going back over those skills to make sure that students are keeping up with those timetables or those difficult to spell words or some of those other concepts. But we can find ways to do that over the summer too. So I'm going to share some of those ideas here. So let's look at what this looks like. So I'm going to show you some of the impact of the summer slide and what that can look like for your students. So this is just some information that we have for you. When we look at summer slide, we see that the biggest group that's impacted by this are our students in grades 3 through 8. And if you have a 3rd through 8th grader, you know that those are the years that they take their iLearn assessments. So there is a lot of academic content that goes in those years, but it's a lot of important base skills that students use, and they build off of each other from year to year. So those are important to keep. So we see that is greatly impacted in grades 3 through 8. The other thing that we see is on average, test scores usually flatten or they drop during the summer. And we see the biggest drops typically in math rather than reading, but we do see it in both areas. So, right now is iLearn testing season. If your student is in grades 3 through 8, they might have finished up or they're working on finishing up those reading, writing, and math assessments. And then when they come back in the fall, they'll take those assessments again for the next school year. And sometimes we might expect to see a bigger jump because they did pretty well, they continue learning. And so we expect to see that bigger jump, but because they haven't been working over the summer, we see that fall to spring, end of the school year, is spring, and beginning of the school year is fall. We see that jump not as big as we maybe anticipated based on their growth through the school year. We do see, though, that like some students, they do make gains. They do stay steady over the summer. It really is just pretty variable. We can pretty much anticipate from how a student does from fall to winter, how they might do in spring, but it's really hard to tell how they'll do from spring and then take that break in the summer and see how they'll do in fall. So we do work on that throughout the school year. We take time. A lot of teachers plan a week or two or maybe even more of review at the beginning of the school year to help students remember some of those skills, maybe practice some of those things that they haven't worked on. But like I said, we can work on some of those things over the summer, and it doesn't have to be worksheets and things like that. We can find some good tips for you today. So these are just some other tips. Usually by 5th grade, we see summer learning loss in low-income students usually equates to about 2.5 to 3 years being behind their peers. So we see a huge gap there that we want to make sure that we're addressing. And then the other thing we see is students falling behind in the summer. We see those students less likely to graduate from high school or go on to college. And when I was working in the high school classrooms, I would see students students that maybe would do really well, but then at the beginning of the school year, you meet them again, and they're like, I'm not a good student. Maybe college is not the right idea for me. I'm not cut out for this type of learning. I need to pursue some other option. Where maybe it's just that getting back into the habit of being a student and doing those routines and getting those skills back is really what they're struggling with. And they are a good student, but this is a hard transition for them. So those are some of the things that we see as far as the impact of summer slide. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I went on to the next, but I went to the last slide. I'm going the wrong direction. Here we go. All right. So like I said, I wanted to definitely give some tips and ideas of some ways that we can combat that summer slide and work with students on their academic skills over the summer. But like I said before at the beginning, I'm a mama too, and I don't want to, I don't want to be a teacher all summer to my students. I don't want them in a classroom all summer in our home. I want them to enjoy their time at home, enjoy our time as a family. So trying to make learning a fun thing is something that we can work on together. So I have some ideas on here. We can think about summer learning programs. This is something that you can talk about with your teacher of record or your case conference committee. If your school offers a summer program, you can ask about summer school, or maybe your student is part of an extended school year services where they're participating in some kind of school year program over the summer. That could benefit your student. And we do see elementary students who participate in those kind of summer learning experiences. They generally have higher outcomes in math and reading if they continue to receive that support over the summer. So if that's a concern for you and you want to make sure that your student has that academic learning opportunity, you can ask your teacher of record about, like I said, those summer school programs or extended school year. Those are two different things. So, if you want to talk about those, we can talk about those. And also thinking about, if you do enroll your child into a summer program, maybe it's a private summer school program through a community organization, a parks department, things like that. A lot of them will offer academic activities. So looking at what kind of math skills, what kind of reading skills are they working on that might be useful to remember in the classroom. So, with your elementary kiddos, are they working with them on, what time is it? How much time until we go to our next activity? Even small things like that they're working with. If it's not an academically based summer program, that doesn't mean that they don't have academic activities that they add in throughout their day. So those are things you can ask about if you're looking for a summer program. I can tell you, as I've been enrolling, I was telling Lisa earlier today, I started thinking about, I need to really get a move on enrolling my kids in some summer programs, and things are starting to fill up. So make sure you check and see what's out there in your community for summer programs if that's something that you're interested in.
Maggie, if I could add one thing. So you were talking about extended school year, which is different from summer school. So extended school year is considered for kids that have IEPs and case conference committee decisions. So keep in mind that extended school year is something to have a discussion about, and I'll drop a document in, whereas summer school is something that schools aren't required to offer, but they might have it. But then Maggie is talking about some of the outside resources also. So it's kind of like there's three different areas there: extended school year, summer school, and then some outside resource for summer.
That's right. Thanks there, Lisa. Yeah, and there are good options for all kinds of situations. So if you're curious about all three of them to find out what will work for you, there's probably something out there that will work for your student. So thanks for reminding me of that. If you're staying home and maybe you're spending time as a family, maybe you're doing it that way over the summer and you're not interested in a summer program, that's totally fine. And we can encourage some different ways for our students to learn at home. So One of the things that is really important, we're talking about, we see a little bit of a dip in reading comprehension. So just making reading a priority in your family routine. For my family, routine in general is really important over the summer. Having a schedule, not necessarily down to the minute, but before my son eats lunch, he needs to brush his teeth, wash his face, and read for 15 minutes kind of thing. Maybe it's a routine like that. So it's just whatever works for your family, but encourage reading in that routine. And depending on your student's age, it might be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. It just kind of depends on their age and what's appropriate for them. But even reading for a short period, just practicing that skill every day is really beneficial for your student. So some ways that you can kind of make sure that you're getting reading in during your summer, participating in your summer reading programs. Maybe your school has a summer reading program. Library programs often offer a library summer reading kickoff and different kinds of rewards for reading. If you went to school around the same time I did, you might have gotten Book It over the summer, and they are still going with their 40th anniversary this year. That Book It program is still available for pre-K through sixth grade students. And even if you're in a homeschool program, they offer Book It rewards for students and their families. So you can get your personal pan for reading along with your kiddo as well. And that might be something that's useful for you. If you are walking around a park or a neighborhood and you see a little free library, even if you don't pick up anything by just looking at the books in the library, maybe reading some of the titles, even if you put them back, that's a good reading practice, and just kind of putting that emphasis on the importance of reading and the excitement of reading, finding something new and enjoyable to read. And then once you're done reading, the idea is not just spending time reading, but it's making sure that we're understanding what we're reading. So asking your student if they, can tell you a little bit about what they read in their story, or if you're reading to them, what did I read to you? Tell me a little bit about it. Maybe asking them to retell the story a little bit. What happened in your book, or what was this? One of the things that I really enjoyed as my son was moving from that learning to read phase into the reading to learn, and he could really read more independently, chapter books on his own. We still really liked reading together, and he loved it when we would go to the library and get the same book, so that we read the same book at the same time. So we read Holes was one of the books we read at the same time, because the library just has oodles of copies of that. So we could check out the same book at the same time, read it, and talk together. So that could be something that your family could enjoy. Thinking about getting out into the community, you can think about different kinds of museums or local parks. We have some great state parks in Indiana, and they might have some different educational activities. I know the National Forestry Service also has a junior ranger program where you can go out and do some different activities to become a junior ranger. So different things like that could be fun. Also think about hands-on learning, things like cooking with your student. I know that usually makes my kitchen a little messier than I do it on my own, but they always have fun, when we can make cookies, or maybe some dip to go with our potato chips or sandwiches. My older son that's getting ready to be in high school, he's, practicing making some dinners and things like that. But that is all this year that he's in culinary arts. He's telling me that is really helpful, that I knew my fractions on those measuring cups a little bit more than some other kids, because he had practiced those cooking skills. But even things like gardening, building projects, usually those involve a little bit of math, thinking about how many days until we water the plants, or how big we cut our materials for building projects. All of those we can add a little bit of math or reading into our projects. If you're traveling, one of the things that my students really like to do, or my kiddos, is we take stamps along the way with us when we are traveling, so that we can find postcards and then send them either to ourselves or to grandparents, to friends, things like that. So they're a fun little souvenir, but that also helps them with their writing skills, learning our address, or their grandparents' address if they're writing that address down. So postcards are a fun way if you're traveling, or keeping travel journals. There's all kinds of things. I know that there is an Indiana festival guide that I see at a lot of public places. So even if you're looking at that for some current events, there's stuff all around the state of Indiana. You can look and see what kind of parades or festivals, putting those on the calendars. That might be a good activity for your family. Goodness, I put so many different ideas down here, so I'm just kind of looking through. But these definitely share some things in the chat as you're thinking about ways that you keep your kids learning and engaged over the summer. While we're doing all of these ideas and thinking about all these things, one of the things that's really helpful for me is having a calendar where, we have all of these great ideas and my kids want to do all of them right when we're out of school. So maybe picking one or two things. We're going to go to this state park this week, and I'm not necessarily going to pick the day because sometimes the weather does it for us, but we can kind of have a goal for a fun activity for the week and a way that we're going to learn while we're there. So those are some options for you. Even if you don't have an outside garden, you're looking at science, you can grow green onions in a glass in your windowsill from almost anywhere if you've got some sunshine. And that could be a good lesson on photosynthesis, and you can work with your kids on that. So there's all kinds of things. But really the whole idea with our kiddos when we're spending time with them over the summer is connecting as a family, spending that quality time together, and trying to make sure that we're, making those academic activities fun while we have that time with our kiddos. Okay, so those are all kinds of different ideas that we can add into our summer routine, but then thinking about once it's time to get ready to go back to school, you might have a couple weeks, you might have a couple months, depending on your school, but thinking about getting back into the routine of getting ready for school can really be hard for some families. And it seems like it's really far away. But making sure that you're ready for that well ahead of time can really make that transition easier. So like I said earlier, my family really thrives on routine. So even during the summer with a teenager who likes to sleep in, and he's got a routine that we are going to follow, even if it's not a minute by minute schedule, something to keep his day consistent. So that might help your kids too, with just, feeling secure, understanding what's expected of them, how they move throughout their day, without a whole school schedule that they're really used to following. That can really, kind of be overwhelming with what to do with the day. But then once they've had the whole summer to get used to that routine of what they do with their day, getting used to that schedule that we're going to be getting ready to go back to school, can kind of help, especially in the morning, getting up in the morning, going to bed at night, brushing our teeth, getting, our lunch together. If we're bringing our lunch, all of those things we can build back slowly into our routine. So it's not so overwhelming when we do go back to school. Along with that, kind of setting a regular bedtime, if screens are something that you're thinking about over the summer, you can think about, at least those 30 minutes to an hour before bedtime. Our doctors tell us that is a good time to start shutting down those screens so that our bodies can adjust and start relaxing, so that our bodies are ready for bed. And then 9 to 12 hours of sleep is how much school-age children are recommended to get, so they feel rested and ready for their day ahead. And that is just a lot of sleep. But I tell you, over the summer, sometimes they can really get to that amount. So all of those things work together. If you're working on reducing screen time, aside from just that 30 to 60 minutes before bed, no matter what your digital carrier is, looking into those parental safety features in your Apple or Android phones. If your kiddos have those, you can set screen time locks, or where there's a certain amount of time or a certain time that the phone locks out of that screen time, so that is something that's just kind of already built into the routine. And then I can usually add time back in if it's a special circumstance or things like that. Maybe just building in things that don't require screens into your day, making sure that you have time for outdoor play, you have reading time, maybe there's some arts and crafts time and you have a specific space set up that's not around screens. That can kind of help you set up some of those digital boundaries. But definitely checking into those parental safety features on your tech. That is something that really helped me make sure to manage my screen time and help set that expectation and routine. And then also that helps me set healthy tech boundaries with myself, because if I'm home with my son all week, all summer, and he's seeing me on my phone constantly, but his phone ran out of time, and his lock is on, then he's really seeing that, that's not as important for his health because I'm doing those things. So modeling that healthy tech, boundary with yourself in front of your kids is another healthy way to kind of getting ready back to those expectations. Oh, I think I went backwards again. No, I didn't. I went forward. I'm sorry. I hit a button on accident. All right, so here's some other things that we can try, and some of these are just a little bit of reminders. So thinking about using those math skills daily over the summer. So whether it's, if you're in a car or you're traveling and they're asking, are we there yet? You can tell them it will be there at this time. How much time from there is now? And you can practice some addition and subtraction with elapsed time, or maybe how many miles left, just adding those real life math skills. My kids love to go garage sale shopping over the summer. Sorry. So giving them a budget and having them work through how much things cost and if they can afford it, what the change looks like. Before they go and do their transaction, they can do some of that math skills with me so that they are practicing that, or paying for some goodies at the grocery store. If they're going grocery shopping with me and they want something, what's the budget look like? How much is that going to cost? Do we have enough money in your allowance to do that? So those are some different math activities. We talked about summer programs. So even if you're not doing like a summer camp that's like a week long or a summer long, you can look at your local library again. Even there through those summer programs, they'll have some day programming, some kind of events going on. If you have a community center or parks department, they should have some kind of daytime activities that you might be able to participate in. So hopefully those would be fun and engaging for your students. With reading, again, building in that daily reading habit, challenging your kids to read something maybe that you think that they would enjoy, that they could read with you, that they could talk to you about. Practicing writing with better reading skills, we become better writers. So encouraging your kids to write over the summer, whether it's writing those postcards, maybe journaling, or maybe it's just drawing at this point, depending on how old they are. But practicing their writing skills is great practice while they're out of school. And there are all kinds of different tech tools out there. I'm going to give you just a couple in a little bit that you can use, but there's all kinds of different apps and platforms, just depending on what kind of skills you're trying to grow with your kids. My daughter, that she's finishing up 4th grade right now, but she still struggles with her multiplication. So we use an app that's just on multiplication tables a couple times a day, so that she can get that practice. But there are so many out there. Okay, so 2 apps that I'm going to share with you. Zern Math. Let me find where the chat button is here. So this is an app called Zern Math, and you can use this one. It's got a free K-8 math curriculum, and you as a parent can create a classroom of your student, or if you have multiple students, I tell you, when I did this, I had my son and then his two friends that would come over every day. They were in my classroom, so we did this together. But so you can create your classroom and you can assign students to do some learning activities in there, and that's all very free. It's adjusted with the levels depending on your students' responses to things. So if they are starting to ask questions and they're not getting them right, then we'll bring it a little bit back down to the level that they're answering at so that they can pick up on those skills. But there's all kinds of videos to help with as well. There's two different Khan Academies. If you've heard of Khan Academy, the first link is to Khan Academy Kids. And Khan Academy Kids is for pre-K through second grade. And then Khan Academy is for third through, I believe, 12th grade. Yeah, third through 12th grade for regular Khan Academy. But this goes through all the subjects. So we've really been talking about reading and math today, but social studies, arts, computer tech skills, test prep, if you've got a high schooler getting ready for SATs, all kinds of subject areas you can learn on from Khan. Your students can learn on from Khan. There's videos, practice activities, all kinds of stuff, and that's free as well. And then there's one more website that I would like to share with you, and that is the Learning Lab. Oh, what am I typing in? Oh, don't type in that. That's not the wrong thing.
While
Okay,
Maggie's
right
doing
there.
that, the Learning Lab has lots of wonderful opportunities and resources on it. InSource puts some things on it, but it is a plethora and a well-kept secret that we have been trying to talk about. So I would encourage everyone to you do have to make an account, but then you will receive a lot of resources on Learning Lab.
Yeah. There's when you log in, there's a parent hub, and it really is great for learning activities for you. Even if you have littles that aren't in school yet, if you've signed up for the Dolly Parton Imagination Library and you get those books in the mail, they have lesson plans that go along with those, so you can do some gross motor development activities with your infants and things like that. So there's all kinds of things in the Learning Lab. So that is another one that I would really encourage you to check out. Okay, so we've talked about all kinds of different activities that you could do in the summertime with your students to kind of combat that summer slide. And I just want to give you some examples of what that could look like, just to see, your summers are very short sometimes. They're very valuable time with your family, and sometimes we don't want to think about all this planning to incorporate academics into the summer, because we want to get down to the having fun and the things that we've planned for the summer. So I just would like to show you what summer slide could look like. I'm not going to show you a specific student or any kind of exact student data, but this is just kind of really representative of some things that we see when we look at student test scores. So this is iLearn testing. Like I said, students in grades 3 through 8, they take that iLearn test at the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, and the end of the year. And we could see maybe that we have a student who started out their year with a math score of 130 on their test. And then that same math test, looking at those same skills, when we check that in the mid-year, maybe around Christmas break, when we're getting ready to go off in December, they take that test again and they go up to a score of 180. So we see that they've grown about 50 points. And then they keep working in that grade, they keep learning, and then at the very end of that school year, they take that test again, and they score a 210, and they earn another 30 points. They grow another 30 points. So they've gone from a 130 to a 210 throughout the whole year. They've made a lot of growth. So we could kind of think about that and say, okay, well, I would like to see them at about a 230, maybe at the beginning at their next test, if they're growing at that rate. But if that student is not practicing on their academic skills, if they're not working on those things outside of school, we might anticipate when they come back at the beginning of the next school year that they go from that 210 down to a 150. And this is a little bit of time after kids have come back and teachers are doing that review with students to make sure that they're remembering those skills. So we can see a big dip from a 210 from a 210 to a 150. That's a big dip. And it does look like a year-on-year growth for this student of about 20 points, but that's not a whole lot compared to what they actually grew when we look at what they did over the summer. So same kind of way. If we look at this student, same scores, they went from a 130 to a 180 to a 210, but then they're working over the summer on those skills, their academic skills. Maybe they're practicing a little bit on Khan Academy. They're going out grocery shopping, they're budgeting, they're practicing those things over the summer. And then since they've had that routine, they've been using those skills over the summer, and they don't really have to do a whole lot of cognitive work to remember those skills. They really can grow, and we can see them maybe get up to a 240. So going back, looking at ELA, that same student, maybe at the beginning of the year, they score 150. They keep working hard over the year. And then in the middle of the year, before they break for winter, they score a 200. And then they continue working. And at the end of the year, they take that same test and they get a 230. So they've grown from a 150 to a 230 on their ELA test. And then if they're not reading, if they're not writing and not practicing, we might see them dip down all the way to a 170. So again, year on year, it looks like they grew a little bit, but we can really see this summer learning loss from the end of the year to the beginning of the year. And we can always move back up from that, just like we did the year before, but it definitely slows down the overall growth for a student because we won't see them necessarily get back up to this 210 by the Christmas break of the next school year. But again, looking at that ELA rate, if they go from a 150 to a 200 before Christmas break and then a 230 in the spring, and they work on their reading skills over the summer, they practice writing maybe with a little bit of journaling and some different things, and they are kind of really growing in their reading skills over the summer, we might see them move up to a 260. And so that we can see that growth and they can continue from where they left off in the spring and just keep growing throughout that whole next year. So like I said, this is not any individual student scores, but this is representative of some of the things that we see when we look at iLearn scores. It's not to scare you, but summer slide is a real thing that we do see happen. And like I said before, teachers do anticipate that kids need a little bit of reminder on the skills that they learned in the year before. So we count for that a little bit. But working with your kiddos over the summer can really make a huge impact between scores like a 240 and a 260 to a 150 and a 170. Even if we're not talking about benchmarks or what that means as far as a pass fail, but you can see the large difference in those numbers. Okay, so we are about at the end of our time. So I definitely want you to be thinking, typing those questions in the chat if you have them. Feel free to unmute your mic or raise your hand if you have a question that you'd like to ask out loud. But I just wanted to make sure I ended today with giving you some of the resources that we use to create this presentation and for you to continue to learn. So we've got all kinds of different links here that you can check out to keep reading or look at some of these different resources.
Thank you, Maggie. So this is a great time to ask any questions if you have them. And I put the Book It program link in the chat and also the extended school year technical assistance document, Maggie.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. Yes, I think I got my love of reading from the Book It program.
Yeah. It was definitely something my kids took part in and was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And Maggie, thank you so much for coming. And I don't know if anyone does have any questions, but this is an excellent opportunity to look at resources. Khan Academy. I didn't know about the Zern math, that is great. The learning lab, these are all activities. And then those daily things that you can do with your kids that keep up on the reading skills and keep up on the math. And I want to most certainly thank everyone for coming and hope that you will utilize these resources. Does anybody have a question or a comment, maybe something that they do with their kiddos or did years ago? So Becky says, great example. Thanks. And this will go on our YouTube channel. So maybe you can share this, right? If you go to our InSource and go to our YouTube channel, you'll be able to find this. Oh, Tamara, would you like to ask a question?
No, make a comment.
Okay.
So in reference to other ideas, the Center for Leadership Development, it's off of MLK. It works with just about every kids, but it's in a inner city. But they have a lot of great programs, a lot of them free. And they do a lot regarding summer programs as well as school prep, college prep, just a lot of great resources. So, and
Great.
it's affordable for families.
Thank you. And that is so important to have it affordable because there are a lot of structured summer programs that are pretty expensive. Now, some have scholarships, so families should always ask, do you have a scholarship or any kind of sliding scale? Thank you so much. Oh, thank you for putting the link in also. Does anyone else have any other comment or question? Well, if you do not, I want to thank you all again for joining us for office hours with IDOE and InSource. My name is Lisa Paddock, and I work for InSource, and we're so happy you spent the time with us today, and especially Maggie Hampton, Technical Assistant Specialist at IDOE, and for these great ideas and resources. So at this point, we will go ahead and thank you all again and hope that you'll visit our website at insource.org and also the Department of Education's website. You can just Google Indiana Department of Education and it will come up. So if that is all we have at this moment, thank you all. And we hope that you have a wonderful week. Thank you.